In this parable, we can see two flawed individuals, two flawed brothers who show us two ways that our lives can go wrong. The youngest brother, well, he wants what he wants when he wants it. He wants it now. No such thing as delayed gratification. Give me what is mine and give it to me now. I want my pleasure. It's self-centered, it's selfish, and he wants his independence. Now, there is a good independence we need from our parents, but this isn't it. Basically, he's saying, you're dead to me, so give me my inheritance. He separates himself from the Father. Symbolically speaking, separates himself from God. He wants to be apart, responsible to no one with any authority over him. He wants to be out on his own, doing what he wants to do when he wants to do it, and experiencing pleasure. That's what sin is called. Doing what you want to do regardless of what might happen, or of anybody else's feelings, not caring who you hurt. And symbolically, he separates himself from God. And he gets him to the place where he's down and out. He has no food. In fact, he's feeding pigs and wants to eat their food. Pretty low down. That's one way to go wrong. Another way to go wrong is the eldest brother, who basically says, I've done everything right. I've obeyed you all my life. I've worked hard as a slave here, and what do you do for me? You don't do anything for me. Here this son comes back, and you welcome it. Your son, he says. What's wrong with that? Well, a couple things at least. He's judgmental about somebody else and thinks that he's better than his brother is. And he's basically saying, I want nothing to do with him. He's not my brother anymore. He says to his father, your son. And his father says back to him, your brother. He wants nothing to do with that. In fact, that's not so uncommon. I've heard parents say, jokingly, I hope, I've heard parents say about, you know what your son has done this time? We want to distance ourselves from those who have gone wrong. And this older son wants to be independent, not connected, and he finds himself outside the house just as well as the youngest brother did. In the midst of these two things, we find a forgiving and an unconditional loving Father. And the youngest brother remembers this. So there he is, off feeding the pigs, wanting to eat the pigs' food. And I love this part. It says, he came to his senses. Isn't it great when we come to our senses? I came to my senses. Okay. So he thinks, my dad's a real loving guy. Maybe he's got enough love left in him to let me be a slave. So on that hope, he heads back. And when he gets close to the house, his father runs from the house out to greet him and puts a robe on him and throws him a big party. My son, you are back. You belong. How I have been longing for you to be. It speaks to us not only of our loving God who loves us unconditionally, it also speaks of our own desire and our hope for God, especially when we feel apart or separated, maybe by sin, maybe by our wanderings, who knows? We have a longing for God, which is within us. I read something about a story that Ernest Hemingway wrote about a father and a son who had become estranged. There's been a lot of hurt there and some separation, and the son takes off and runs to the city of Madrid in Spain. The father can't take it. So father goes to Madrid, takes out an ad in the paper that says, Paco, all is forgiven. I want to meet you. Please come to Hotel Montana at noon on Tuesday. Love, Papa. So, father went to Hotel Montana at noon on Tuesday. What he found in the hotel square were 800 young men named Paco looking for their fathers. Doesn't that say something about the human race? We're looking for our fathers, or even more, we are looking for our God. We need to be connected to Him. And if we think, I'm the only one doing this, I'm the only one feeling on the outs, I'm the only one feeling separated, well, get a hint. We're all looking for that place in God's heart. And we're all called by God. He comes out to meet us, to bring us home. That's the youngest son. Now, the oldest son, as you notice, there wasn't any conclusion in the gospel. The father says, your brother, he's trying to make a connection back to him. It's your brother is back. Let's rejoice. And it doesn't say what the oldest son did. But what he's trying to do is put him back in connection, which tells us we have a responsibility and a need to be connected to one another, to be brother or sister to them. That we are the ones who need to brother or sister somebody else. And not just our own family, but other people who walk the face of the earth with us. We have an obligation to do that. And the father says to his oldest son, come back in, get back connected. You're not out there on your own. You're not an independent agent. You are called to live for someone beyond just number one. You're called to be connected to your brother. How do we do that? Like I say, there is no conclusion in this gospel, and it's just as well, because we write that conclusion ourselves. To that end, I want to tell you about a story that I read in a book by Father William Bausch, and he presents it as a true story, so I guess it is. It's a story about a youth minister named Tony. And Tony told Father Bausch, he says, one night I was preparing for a retreat for the teenagers, and I was working on my talk, and it just wasn't going anywhere, and I was really struggling with it. So about 2 a.m., I decided just to take a break. So I went a couple blocks down to the diner down there. And I asked the waiter behind the counter for a cup of coffee, and he gave it to me. And shortly thereafter, 3 guys walked in. And they sat down, and one guy says to the other, kind of like in a half-drunken voice, he says, tomorrow's my birthday. And the other guy says, yeah, so what? So they ordered their coffee, they drank their coffee, and for a few minutes they got up and left. So Tony says to the waiter, he says, do these guys come in here often? He said, oh yeah, they come in here every night, just a little bit after 2. They got some low-paying job as night watchmen down at the factory a couple blocks from here. And that's who they are. And Tony says, I overheard one say it's going to be his birthday tomorrow. He says, how would you go in with me to throw him a birthday party tomorrow night? The waiter says, oh, sure, why not? So Tony went home and got some of his teenagers who were going to be on retreat, and some other people kind of passed the word around. He bought some decorations and a big cake, and they all went to the diner. And sure enough, a little bit after 2 a.m., the three guys come in. As soon as the guy comes in, Rob, whose birthday it was, they sing, happy birthday to Rob. And he stood there, speechless, with his jaw dropped for a while. Couldn't speak. Finally, he said, wow, thank you. He said, but I got a request. Mind if I take this cake home with me the way it is? Nobody's ever given me a cake before in my life. They said, oh, sure. So they had some other, party favors and that kind of stuff. It was the party didn't last too long, and finally people got up and they left, and Tony's sitting there at the counter with the waiter behind it, and the waiter leans over to him and says, I'll bet you're from some kind of church, aren't you? And Tony looks at the waiter and he says, yes, I am. I'm from the church that'll throw you a birthday party at 2 o'clock in the morning at a diner. And the waiter said, if I could find that church, I would join it tomorrow.